So let's talk about, A, what you think is going to unfold versus what you think they should do. We know they're not going to do what you recommend.
But you don't know that, though. Wait. Here, in terms of defaulting or a debt moratorium, there's no question that they will. They will default. They will stop paying. The only question is when, and will it be orderly, and do they have a strategy for economic recovery? Because I tell you, you look at these countries, Greece will default, guaranteed.
And that means, and so will the other nations then, like Italy, Portugal,
Right.
Spain.
Yes.
What does that mean then? That means monetization. That means devaluation.
Yeah, it means that they should now say, get ahead of all that and say, look here, Greece, Portugal, Spain, Italy, Ireland, all get a debt moratorium, debt freeze, stop payment. Just do it in an orderly, legal way now. Don't destroy the economy, because now people are complaining on Bloomberg and CNBC. They're saying, yeah, wait a minute, the Greek austerity program is already impacting the European economy in a bad way, because that means fewer orders, fewer jobs, depressed economic conditions, right? Loss of activity. So that stuff doesn't work. Don't even try it. And you might as well include Iceland. You better include Latvia. Then there are some non-Euro European countries, Hungary, Romania, plus some others. Belarus,
Let's stop
Ukraine.
there, though. And, of course, Ukraine. What is this going to do politically to Europe? We already see the politicians dropping like flies.
Yeah, but right now, this is the other interesting news over the weekend is, remember, when you go back to Germany in 1930, 1931, 32, you get this question of ungovernability, that the parliamentary system breaks down and can't work. And this is where the U.S. is heading to. But just over the weekend, two big countries have become totally ungovernable. The British are ungovernable now because they have a hung parliament. There is no majority. There's no party that has a clear, absolute majority, 326 members of the House of Commons. Nobody has it. So now you get this very sleazy horse trading, the worst side of parliamentary cretinism coming out among Gordon Brown, who's now on his way out, this Clegg, who was the darling of the media, and then this very sinister oligarch, this guy who's got the whole British aristocratic pedigree, Cameron. So, and everybody knows that what that government is going to do is take the knife to the flesh of the British people and flay them alive in order to pay for the bailouts that Gordon Brown carried out, right? He's the guy who invented the bailout for Northern Rock and for Royal Bank of Scotland and Lloyd's Bank. So Britain is ungovernable. Let's look at Germany. This wretched woman, this stupid Merkel, has lost her majority in the upper house of the German parliament. This goes back to the elections on Sunday in North Rhine-Westphalia. That is used to be the industrial heart of Europe. It used to be, well, it's Cologne, Dusseldorf, Essen, Bochum, these kinds of places. It's the biggest federal state in Germany. Now, the Christian Democrats, so-called, of Merkel, have lost 10% of their votes there. They're probably going to lose the domination of that state. You probably get a social democratic government with the Greens and maybe the Left Party. Anyway, Merkel loses it. So in Germany, you have the upper house of the parliament is called the Federal Council, the Bundesrat. And in this Bundesrat, that's where these states are represented. The fact that North Rhine-Westphalia has now been lost to the Christian Democrats means that Merkel can't get her stuff through, and she's already got a coalition government. So two of the biggest, probably the two most important countries in Europe from various points of view, Britain and Germany, now ungovernable, and I think that's what you have to look at rather than the fates of different politicians. The one person who could act in the crisis is Sarkozy, because thanks to General de Gaulle, the French Fifth Republic Constitution gives the French president the most sweeping emergency powers. He could come out tomorrow and say, I'm banning hedge funds, I'm banning credit default swaps, I'm banning CDOs and other things. And they also ought to get busy on that Tobin tax, right, the sales tax on derivatives, to slow down and throw sand in the gears of these speculators.
Webster, I understand that. Specifically, though, with the decisions they're making, what does this say about the global financial system? And are you revising your forecast for a total global economic collapse? Because even if, all these great policies got put in place, the black hole is already so big. I mean, we know the media is lying when they say that the economy's turned around.
Well, you can stop a depression in very short time. There's no reason to live in a depression. Anybody who says that the only thing to do in a depression is let it bottom out, let it crash down, and then you'll have a recovery, that is pure insanity, because that kills, and it's also not necessary, and it's not even true. There's no guarantee that there's some kind of business cycle that will lift you out of this. As a matter of fact, what we have now is this is not a business cycle anymore. This is not a recession. It's a world economic depression, and it's a disintegration. And the disintegration will be the euro, as various countries catastrophically drop out, Greece, or get thrown out. You'll have panic runs on different currencies, right? Some of these non-euro places like Hungary, right? You have a panic run on them, or Poland, and then you'll have a panic run on the euro, and that will break up the European Central Bank. The British think, they kid themselves, that they can stay out of this. They're being sucked in even as we speak. The pound will go down, and once you have a panic run on the pound and the bankruptcy of the main British banks, that hits the U.S. directly, because we have this euro-dollar market, right? Several trillion U.S. dollars that have been parked in London for many, many decades. If the British banks get into absolute bankruptcy and panic, with panic runs on them and also on the pound, they will have to start dumping those euro dollars, and that will be the straw that breaks the camel's back vis-a-vis the dollar. Don't wait for China or anybody else. It's going to be the British, and that's very interesting, because this is the role the British have typically played in 1929, 1933, 1971, and just now in 2008 with Barclays Bank. It's the British who generally stab the U.S. in the back at the key moment of a financial crisis by trying to save themselves, or also with malice trying to export the depression to the U.S. So that means that the second wave of the depression is here, and the third wave cannot be far behind. And with the second wave is the collapse of Europe, from Greece now through the southern European Euro countries to the British, and then immediately over to the U.S. And the U.S., on the U.S. side, of course, there's still room for the collapse of the dollar. Panic runs out of the dollar. And, of course, panic runs on the Federal Reserve.
What happens to Asia? Mark Faber and others are saying 90% chance in the next year that China is going to implode.
Well, I think we can start with Japan, since the big brouhaha is about sovereign debt. Japan is one of the most indebted countries. Japan has, I think the public debt is 200% of gross domestic product. If you look on most of the lists, Japan is second only to Zimbabwe in the amount of debt. So Japan is very heavily indebted. On the other hand, Japan still has a very significant industrial economy, so they can save themselves. But they would also be candidates ultimately for some kind of a debt moratorium. In other words, a freeze on these debts.
Yeah, we know there's no way to pay off all these fake derivatives. It's designed to bring the world into collapse, and they'll reorganize it with this pipe dream of a world government run by bankers, as if the public worldwide is going to put up with that. I mean, that's too overt. Webster, stay there. I want to shift gears into the domestic front and the new Supreme Court nominee who wants our free speech.